If you order me to drop my pen the exact second my shift ends, I will literally drop the mic and walk out in the middle of a $1 million presentation. Sometimes, the absolute worst punishment you can give someone who treats you unfairly is to follow their absurd rules down to the very last letter. Internet culture calls this malicious compliance. Welcome to QuReX Stories. Today, we're diving into stories where arrogant managers and scammers completely backfire and destroy themselves using the very contracts and rules they wrote. If you're ready, let's start with every corporate employee's biggest nightmare. First story, the $5 million overtime rule. Our first story comes from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, showing exactly how a micromanaging boss orchestrated his own downfall. I was working as a senior copywriter and presentation strategist at a major advertising agency. I actually loved my job, and to make sure projects were perfect, I would often voluntarily stay until 7 p.m., even though my shift ended at 6. I wasn't getting paid overtime, but the quality of the work mattered to me. That is, until David arrived. David was our new department manager, a massive micromanager who was completely obsessed with numbers. During his first week, David sent a mass email to the entire department. Per company policy, unauthorized overtime is strictly forbidden. Everyone will shut down their computers and exit the building exactly at 6 p.m. Anyone at their desk at 6:01 will receive a formal write-up. I tried to tell him that we had massive ongoing campaigns and sometimes needed flexibility. He called me into his office and yelled at me, "The rules do not bend. When 6 p.m. hits, the pen drops. Just do exactly what you're told." Okay, I thought. The rules don't bend. 2 weeks later, we had an annual $5 million contract renewal meeting with one of the biggest clients in our agency's history. I had built the presentation from scratch and was leading the pitch. The client's team ran late, so the meeting didn't actually start until 5:15 p.m. The pitch was going incredibly well. The client looked thrilled. It was 5:55 p.m. The client's CEO asked me to dive into the budget breakdown details, the most crucial part of the entire campaign. Right at that moment, I glanced at my watch. 5:58. I slowly put the presentation clicker down on the table. I grabbed my bag and closed my laptop. David looked at me in absolute horror and whispered, "What are you doing? Keep going." The client's CEO looked confused. The clock struck exactly 6 p.m. I turned to David and said, "Mr. Manager, as you explicitly stated in your email, I am required to drop my pen and exit the building at exactly 6 p.m. The rules do not bend. Have a wonderful evening." And I walked right out of that $1 million pitch room. I heard the rest from my co-workers. The room went ice cold after I left. Because David didn't know the intricate details of the budget spreadsheets, he started stuttering and couldn't answer the client's questions. The client's CEO stood up and said, "I cannot entrust $5 million to an agency that can't even manage its own internal communication," and walked out. The contract was cancelled. Exactly 48 hours after that disaster, executive management had David pack his desk and escorted him out of the building. Me? I transferred to another agency, and my clock-out time was exactly 6 p.m. Second story. The fine print in the lease. Perfect timing, right? Now let's look at how an analytical mind turned a boring 40-page legal document into the ultimate weapon of revenge. I had just graduated from college and was renting a house with 2 friends. Our landlord, Mrs. Higgins, was a literal nightmare. If the heater broke, she wouldn't fix it. If there was a leak, she told us to handle it. When our 2-year lease ended and it was time to move out, she informed us she would not be returning our $3,000 security deposit. Do you know what her excuse was? She found a microscopic water stain on the kitchen counter and claimed we hadn't hired a professional invoiced cleaning company before vacating. Her goal was obvious: to steal our deposit. I am the kind of person who is obsessed with details, numbers, and analyzing text. I took that 40-page lease agreement, written in tiny legal jargon, and spent 4 straight hours reading it, line by line. Mrs. Higgins had used a standard, incredibly strict contract template she found on the internet. And right then, on page 28, clause 4, I hit the absolute jackpot. The clause read exactly like this. The tenant is required to have the property professionally cleaned. In return, the landlord is required to repaint the entire interior with premium paint, replace worn carpets, and polish all hardwood floors within 30 days prior to the tenant's move-out date. If these conditions are not met, the landlord agrees in advance to pay the tenant damages equal to 3 times the security deposit. Mrs. Higgins probably hadn't even read the heavy contract she used to trap us. I immediately called a professional cleaning company, paid them $200 to clean the house, and got an official invoice. Then I had my cousin, who is a lawyer, draft a formal legal notice. In the notice, we stated that we provided the professional cleaning invoice, but because she failed to fulfill her painting and flooring obligations, she legally owed us $9,000 in damages. Otherwise, we would see her in court. When she received the notice, she called me crying. She was begging, saying, "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't even notice that clause." I calmly reminded her that rules are rules, and we must follow the contract to the letter. The result? She was so terrified of court fees that she wired exactly $9,000 into our account the very next day. That $200 professional cleaning was the best investment I have ever made in my life. Third story. Ansenans, the zoning law. Then war against the city. And for today's grand finale, a legendary story of civil resistance where justice beats local bureaucracy. I own a detached house with a small private driveway on my own property. Last month, I parked my car in my driveway, ensuring it wasn't sticking out into the street at all. When I woke up the next morning, there was a $150 parking ticket under my wipers. It was issued by the city municipality. The reason? The front bumper of the vehicle was closer than 4 inches to the invisible property boundary line. I went down to City Hall to contest it. I said, "The car is completely on my private property. I'm not blocking the sidewalk." The clerk at the desk looked at me with an incredibly smug attitude and said, "Read the 1984 City Zoning Ordinance, sir. The rules are clear. Even if it's on your property, your car cannot be that close to the public street line. Pay the fine and stop complaining." Okay. If they loved that old 1984 zoning ordinance so much, I was going to use that rulebook to its absolute limit. I spent my entire weekend at the city library reading through those old zoning codes. I pulled up the city blueprints and measured the parking lots, and I made a mind-blowing discovery. The municipal administration building, where I got the ticket, and the police station right next to it, were built in 1990, and according to that 1984 zoning ordinance, they used to fine me. Both buildings were completely illegal. The city's own parking lot was encroaching on the sidewalk line by over 6 feet more than the law allowed, and the main entrance stairs of the police station were spilling entirely onto the public walkway. I gathered all the blueprints, maps, and measurements, and put together a massive dossier. I sent this file to the 3 biggest local newspapers, the state inspectors, and the district court. The headline was, "City fines citizen for 4 inches while using an illegal 6-foot parking lot." The story made the front page the next day. The city council held an emergency meeting. State inspectors came down, audited the municipal building, and fined the city tens of thousands of dollars in encroachment penalties, based on their very own bylaws. Furthermore, the tickets for hundreds of citizens who were fined under that exact same clause, just like me, were completely dismissed. I really can't wait to go back to that clerk one day and tell him just how much I love the 1984 zoning ordinance. Sometimes, the biggest flaw in the system is the system's own rules. Would you have waited for the clock to run out in that $1 million meeting, or would you have caved to your boss? Let's discuss it in the comments. If these brilliant revenge stories gave you a sense of peace, click the video on your screen right now where you can watch the incredible story of a Baker Kim who fed a fake foam cake to a choosing beggar influencer. Don't forget to like and subscribe to QuReX Stories. Follow the rules, but make sure you learn how to use them to your advantage. See you next time.